Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and talk about this game.
Yeah,
as
thank you for reaching out and inviting me. This is so fun. I mean, I can obviously talk about this for ages.
no,
So, yeah.
so obviously you're a Last of Us content creator. So I thought, like, first of all, what made you want to go into just talking about the game sort of as part of your TikTok job, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a job. I'm in Canada, so
Hmm.
I cannot make any money off TikTok.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I started I think in the fall of 2020, so
Hmm.
shortly after the game came out, and it
Yeah,
just kind of started as like I was also like really new to just TikTok in general at that
yeah,
point. I had barely any idea how to use it because I joined TikTok during the pandemic like most other
yeah,
people.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it kind of just started as like an outlet for my love for the game, and
Mhm.
I hadn't really found a community at that point, and
Yeah.
uh I started it kind of started as like a cosplay account, which is like weird. It was my first time doing any sort of
Yeah.
cosplay, anything.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, from there it kind of evolved, and I just kind of started talking about the game as I saw more and more like the discourse online and like
Mm.
what people were saying, and I had a completely different understanding of the game from a lot of the
Yeah,
more
yeah.
unfavorable opinions. And so I was like, well, I have this account. Um, Maybe I can just talk about it here.
Hmm.
That's kind of how it started. And from
No.
there, like my videos just got more in depth. I mean, I have goals going forward to create more kind of didactic content and um better edited stuff,
Right. Okay.
more highly produced
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
no, I get you. I get you. No, it's really
But
cool because I think when I sort of messaged you, like you sort of came up on my radar when obviously the TV show started coming out. So it was sort of
mm,
like your weekly thoughts videos coming out. So I was like, oh, here's somebody who likes the game, and like obviously that sort of put me down like a rabbit hole of seeing, oh, they like The Last of Us Part Two, and oh, they like Abby as well. So that like at that time I was like, pretty sure I've never seen anyone talk openly about liking that character. So I was like, oh no, this is like an interesting, just perspective to like look into. I mean, was I guess in terms of when you like hopped on, sort of following the game coming out, like had you like presumably played the first one, or did you sort of pick up part two and then like go back to playing the first one? What was your you know, which did you play first? I guess as such.
for sure, yeah, I definitely played the first game first. I
Mhm.
played it when it came out
Yeah,
back in 2013
yeah, yeah.
on a PS3. I
Hmm.
think I was 19 years old. I don't know.
Hmm.
I was in college,
Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, I mean, and I loved it. It was definitely one of my favorite games.
yeah.
And but the second one definitely just took it so much farther for
Hmm.
me. I played it obviously right when it came out. I was
Yeah.
watching the countdown on my
Oh, nice, nice.
PS4, and I was living with my parents because it was the
Mm.
pandemic, and yeah, it just completely. I didn't really know like what I was expecting from it.
Yeah, yeah.
I had obviously seen some of the promotional material, but obviously they were very kind of hush hush with what
Mm.
it was actually about.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen any of the leaks or anything, so
I was gonna say lucky you because I know I think it was like the February the leaks came out. I was sort of unfortunate enough to I was in that mindset at the time where I was like, I'm not going to be able to avoid these just because I'm on like YouTube all the time. It's going to eventually pop up, or there's going to be a thumbnail or something. And I'll be like, oh, I'll try and just see some of them now, and then what the opinion. I'll play the game and then I'll forge my opinion. But like at that time, I think I wasn't too put off by like the spoilers or anything. I was kind of like, oh, I can maybe see Joel would die, like that kind of thing.
yeah.
But I was like, I can't judge anything else that's happening because I don't have the context. I don't know what these scenes are. They look kind of cool, but yeah, I have to wait. But now, yeah, I say lucky you actually on avoided that. That's great. You went in with like a fresh pair of
Yeah.
eyes.
I don't know how I avoided. I think because like up until I played The Last of Us 2, I wasn't really involved in the Last of Us community online at all.
Right. Yep.
So it just wasn't like on my radar.
Yep.
Again, like I watched some of the trailers, but that was it. And even that I didn't, I only watched them once and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
didn't like read too much into them.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad that I didn't have any preconceived notions, because I remember starting the game and just being like, I have no idea what's gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess to in terms of your general thoughts on the game, obviously I know you're on the positive side. So what would you like in terms of your feelings towards The Last of Us 2, like how would you, just describe the game and obviously where you sort of sit on it?
For sure. I think when I played it, I think part of why it was so successful for me is because, as I said, I wasn't so involved in the community. I didn't have, I mean, obviously I loved the first game, but I
Mhm.
didn't have like a super strong emotional attachment to it at that point.
Yep.
So, when, I guess we're gonna talk spoilers now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When Joel dies, I was obviously shocked. I was sad.
Mhm.
But the thing that kept me going, and the thing that I was most interested in, was Abby's motivation. Because I was
Right, okay.
like, they just made us play as this brand new character, and then she did this
Mhm.
heinous thing. And I'm like, there's no way, there's no reason.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, when are we gonna find out? Like,
Mm.
and are we gonna play as her again? I was so curious. So that
Yeah.
was kind of my motivating driver. And it just blew my expectations out of the water. It was not, as I said, not at all what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but um I just remember being so impressed by their balls, like, to be crass.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
just I couldn't believe the decisions that they were making. I thought that they were so unique and, like, brave.
Mhm.
And um definitely on a first playthrough, there were some parts where I was kind of confused, just like time wise, especially in Abby's Seattle days. I was kind of like,
Yeah,
wait,
okay, yeah.
where are we? And so it wasn't like I didn't have like a flawless understanding of it on the
Mhm.
first go through, for sure. But um, it was just like emotional gut punch after gut punch in a good way.
Mhm.
And I remember getting to that final flashback of Joel and Ellie on the porch, and just I was in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house, and just like tears pouring down. And then the game ended, and I was just kind of like staring at my screen for like 10 minutes. I remember
Yep.
my mom came in, she's like, are you are you okay? I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It
um
it's just it's an exhausting experience. Like it's
yeah.
by no means like a bad experience, but you're there with the characters on that ride. Like I remember, obviously, like when you do the boss fight with like Abby and Ellie, and then Ellie goes to Santa Barbara, you're kind of just there like, oh come on, like we don't just
Yeah.
pack it in, like we leave it here, and then you're forced on that journey with her. It's like kind of almost like Joel, doing what he did in the hospital, takes that control away from you as like the player, and it's kind of like, no, we're going to Santa Barbara, we're going to go find Abby, and then it's like, okay, okay, Ellie, I will go with you and see what happens. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. It's just the experience. I think there's certainly like there's nothing like the experience of like The Last of Us. Like a few games of it can top that in terms of like a story which takes
No.
you down these different routes, probably does stuff that you don't 100% agree with, but you kind of like you just have to relish in it and sort of be there because it is a very controversial story. Like in terms of like the ending, obviously with Abby and Ellie having their fight and Ellie choosing to not kill Abby, like where do you sort of sit on that? Because that's a point which is everyone has their opinions on, and should she have done it? Should she not have done it? Like where do you sort of sit on that?
I remember when I first started seeing like the discourse about that ending, I was so shocked that
Mm,
people got to that point and were disappointed that Abby didn't die, because
mm-hmm.
I was on my first playthrough sitting there like screaming at my TV, stop, like leave her
Yeah,
alone, don't kill her. Like,
yeah,
and I remember like going into that fight just feeling so sick, because I thought Abby was going to die. I thought Ellie was
mm-hmm.
going to kill her.
Yeah,
And I did not want that to happen.
mm-hmm.
I'd become so attached to Abby,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that Ellie going through with that wasn't actually going to help her either.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we'd just been through this whole journey as Abby, seeing the consequences of that revenge and how it didn't actually help her.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, Ellie, you don't want to go down that same path.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, and I mean, it definitely took me a couple of playthroughs to like fully grasp everything going on in that
Mm-hmm.
story, and what led Ellie up to that point and why
Mm-hmm.
she decided to let go. Um, but I'm so glad that she did. I think, I know originally she was going to kill her,
Yeah, yeah.
and they ended up changing it, and I'm so glad, because I think, they've said in interviews that it was Ellie's way of like keeping her humanity.
Hmm.
And like, if at that point, as you said, like at that point the player might not fully be aligned with Ellie. Like when she leaves Dina and goes back to Santa Barbara, it's like some people might be like, I'm not okay with this.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the first time we're in control of Ellie and maybe not fully aligned with her.
Hmm.
And um oh crap, I forgot where I was going with that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Um what was I saying before?
So you kind of like, again, it gets taken away from you as the player because Ellie's going to Santa Barbara. You don't sort of 100% agree with her going there. Um,
Yeah.
and it's, sort of takes multiple playthroughs to sort of understand her lens as to why she's doing like the stuff she is, because that is the interesting thing about the game. It is like a sort of almost like an experiment in like empathy, because obviously it's like
Hmm.
it's Naughty Dog putting you through your paces. Like, can you forgive this person who killed one of your favorite characters, or are you going to be, just bitter throughout your whole playthrough? Because that's like, a lot of, like, especially the early criticism at the time, is it comes from like an emotional place, and it's been interesting to see like videos and like essays come out afterwards where like people's opinions have changed from like, replaying the game or like just coming back to it after a while. Like, it is interesting just how they go from just absolutely hating the guts of Abby to then being like, no, I all right, I can hold my hands up and be like, no, no, it's fine. She got away, and I'm happy with that, because she is a human being at the end of the day.
Exactly. Exactly. A human being who lost her father,
Yeah,
just like Ellie did in some way,
yeah.
and I remembered where I was going to go with that, which is not being aligned with Ellie. And then if she'd killed Abby, I don't think I would have been able to forgive her for that,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No,
you know? And yeah, it's interesting seeing how the opinions have changed. I mean, there's obviously still some people who won't change their mind, and that's
mhm.
fine. But I see comments almost every day of people being like, I hated it at first, and then I played it again, and then I played it again, and now I get it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that totally makes sense. Like, it's so much, as you said, it's a demanding game.
Hmm.
It's very emotional. I had to take several breaks on my first playthrough playing
Okay,
it,
yeah,
because
yep.
it's just, it's a lot,
Hmm.
and it is very demanding of a player.
Yeah,
Um, and I can understand. Obviously, it generated very strong reactions, which is
yeah.
understandable. I think it's commendable when people can revisit it and
Mhm.
challenge themselves to maybe change their mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's unfortunate when people remain bitter and don't
Mhm.
and keep their minds closed, and
Yeah,
just or stop playing the game altogether, because it's like
yeah,
you don't have all the context yet.
yeah,
And like, I understand feeling strongly about Joel and feeling angry that he died, but
yeah.
the game has so much more to offer than that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think for like me, like the story I do like of the game. Sometimes I think it is just like a pacing thing. Like, I'm replaying it now because the remaster's come out. So literally today, I think before this interview, I was like, well, I haven't actually got to any of Abby's sections yet. So I feel like if I'm talking to someone who really likes Abby, I should probably try and at least get to day one. So I've got to the sort of bit where you have the first flashback with her and Owen at the aquarium. So I'm like into the story now, and it's I remember like just the first time round playing that first section as Abby, and like, oh, this is really, really dragging. It wasn't even like I don't want to play as this person. Like, she killed Joel. I hate her. It's kind of like just that particular section just felt long, but like it's not any hate towards the character. I think on this replay, I do struggle a bit with the supporting characters for Abby. I just feel like they're not to me anyway. I mean, they might get on this replay, like I sort of see it fresh again. But I know like I really don't like Manny. I don't know what it is, but like just I think for me it's because Manny obviously he was there like in the heat of the moment, just spat on Joel's body, and I was kind of like everyone else was kind of just sat there in the room like not doing anything. Obviously Abby did what she did, but I have a whole game. I have this time to sympathize with Abby. I don't get much of Manny stuff. So that
Yeah.
was. But yeah, I really couldn't warm to him. But like Mel, Owen, I am coming around to them. Whereas I kind of had this preconception in my mind because I haven't played it since it first came out, I was kind of
Mhm.
like, oh, I really remember not liking these people, and then you kind of replaying and you're like, they're not that bad, you know, they've got their own, they've got some qualities to them. I mean, Owen's kind of a, you know, doesn't know what he wants, kind of should be a bit nicer to Mel probably and his unborn baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that supporting cast, I was like, oh, kind of wish I could connect with them a bit more because, you know, I love Jesse, love Dina, and just all those characters around Ellie. But I guess, are you, where do you kind of sit on like Abby's character, like supporting cast? Like, do you know, like them as much as her, or could they have done with a bit more to like flesh them out a bit? Like, where do you sort of sit on them?
Sure. I mean, I think they have a lot working against them,
Hmm.
because of the way that they're introduced. And as far as Abby's day one goes in general, I mean, it's challenging because they had to establish so much.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's basically like you get to this climactic moment and then they have to like pull you back
yeah,
and
yeah.
like introduce this entire new world and cast of characters. So I think, and also like those two flashbacks are in one day for
Yeah,
Abby.
yeah.
So I think, yeah, pacing wise, I can see why that's a bit of a challenge, but I think it's
Hmm.
necessary. You have to kind of
Hmm.
like slow down and
Yeah,
restart, you know? As far as
yeah.
her friends go, um, yeah, I like them all. I mean, what helped for me is to really look at the story from each of their perspectives. You
Mhm.
know, like Manny, what I like about Manny is that he's such a good friend
Right.
to
Yep.
his people.
Yep. Yep.
You know, like his friendship with Abby, like he cares about her.
Hmm.
And and also when you're playing as Abby and you go into that hospital room and she sees her dad,
Hmm.
Manny's there.
Oh, okay. Okay. I did not even
It's
notice that.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
it's young Owen and young Manny. So
Right.
he's traumatized too, you
Hmm.
know? And Mel, like she wasn't in that room, but we learned that she was also close with Abby's dad. And so you kind of get the sense that all of these kids who were kids at the
Hmm.
time, teenagers,
Yeah.
had all of the adults in their lives potentially
Mm.
murdered in one
Yeah.
night.
Yep.
Um, and then, oh, and also the recording that Ellie finds at the hospital, I firmly believe is Mel's voice.
I thought that actually, yeah, on this like replay, I was like, because I think the
Yeah.
first time around, I thought that was like Abby or something like Abby's voice, but it's like, oh no, that must be Mel, because
It
yeah,
sounds like Ashley Birch,
it
and
does, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I don't think they would have used Ashley Birch and not intended it to be Mel.
yeah,
Um, and
which
her
makes
being
sense.
a yeah,
Yeah,
her being a doctor and
yeah.
one of the doctor's students totally makes sense. Um, but I mean, a lot of people don't like Mel, and I'm like, well, from her perspective, she's got a baby on the way.
Hmm.
Her boyfriend is absent
Yep.
and still in love with his ex,
Hmm.
and um and then, you know, Mel follows him to the aquarium when she learns he's AWOL, and Abby shows up
Yeah.
with these two Scar kids.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And meanwhile, Mel's got a kid of her own on the
Hmm.
way, and Mel assumes that Abby's doing this to get in Owen's good books or to impress Owen
Yeah.
or to like start a weird like family with
Mm,
Owen,
yeah. Yeah.
but it has nothing to do with
No,
Owen.
no. No, I definitely like sympathize her with more like on this playthrough because it's kind of like they're also like because one of the people I've interviewed was on about like not liking her being like heavily pregnant and like still picking fights, and it's kind of like replaying this. To be fair, I was kind of like, well, it is like the society they're in is obviously they are like a militia kind of group. So it's kind of like every able-bodied person, like because Mel's like she's not to that point yet where it's like no, you're too pregnant to fight. It's like no,
Yeah.
you can still like hold a gun, and obviously at that time they're still prepping for like the attack on Haven, like the Scar Islands. So it's kind of like, no, you're still able bodied. You can like fight. It's funny if
And
obviously
she's
get,
a medic.
yeah,
She's a medic,
yeah,
right? So they
yeah,
need her.
yeah, no,
And they need her and also like when they go out to the fob, like it was meant to just be a drive. Like
yeah,
they were ambushed, right?
yeah,
Like it
yeah,
was meant to just she was probably just meant to go to the fob and treat people. She
yeah,
wasn't even
no,
meant to be out in the field. Like
yeah,
so and again, there's something to be said about women's autonomy and she's a nurse, she knows her own body and
yeah, yeah,
but
exactly.
I doubt she would have been part of the Scar Island incursion.
Yeah, yeah,
But you know, she probably would have had to stay behind and treat the wounded when
Yeah,
they
exactly,
when
exactly.
and if they come back.
Yeah,
But
it's like it's interesting to fair like listening to sort of your points there about like the friendship group as such, because like thinking about like Manny being there, it's almost like the group dynamics you get, because it's almost like because Manny was there and saw the aftermath of this thing happen, and like to a point as well, like he like does enable Abby, because like, obviously he's like, we need to kill all these people, like get them out of the way. Whereas like Owen and no, so Mel does enable it as well, but like Owen
Mhm.
especially is like, no, these people are innocent, leave them alone. But like, because listening to like Manny as well talk about the scars and stuff, it's very much like these guys, like it's black and white, they're the
Yeah.
enemy, get rid of them. And like Abby at that point is the same as like, no, they're true, they're the enemy, we need to get rid. And then it's obviously through the course of her story that she learns to empathize with the enemy, and soon like it messes her up, because it's kind of like, oh, what do I do? I had this preconceived notion for so long that these guys are just complete evil, but they're not, they're just normal. It's just the thing, it's just not, they're all just normal people.
Exactly. They're all just people trying to survive. And I
Yeah.
mean, I think Abby and Manny were very much indoctrinated into the WLF mindset. I
Mhm.
mean, they were Isaac's top soldiers, those two. So he's
Yeah.
gotten his claws in them for sure. And what's interesting about the Salt Lake crew dynamic, and I mean, they talk a lot in the director commentary about tribalism and
Mhm.
about tribe within a tribe. And the eight of them are definitely a little pod within the WLF,
Yeah.
right? And they look out for each other first. Like that they're so loyal to each other, like Nora looking out for Abby,
Mhm.
and Nora would rather be tortured
Yeah. Yeah.
than
Yeah.
give away her friend's position. Like
Yeah.
that's commendable.
Yeah, whereas like you kind
And
of got Mel on like the other end of that, where she, because of that point again, the feeling she's sort of got towards Abby, sort of maybe interfering in her relationship with Owen. It's like, well, I kind of at this point don't care what happens to Abby, whereas like Owen is it's a little bit, it's kind of like that, because obviously
I
she
think
might be
it's more like Abby brought this on herself, you know?
okay. Yeah, yeah, no, I get you. No,
She made these choices, and like
mhm.
why should we all have to pay and continue to pay for them?
Yeah,
Right?
no, that is true.
And what's really interesting to me about the whole crew is the difference in each of them and how they interpret what's going on and how they responded to that event. And
Mhm.
and it is different. You have people like Manny and even Jordan who are more like, no, fuck them, they deserved it, move
Yeah.
on. Then there's Mel, who I think you mentioned earlier, she was enabling it. I think she was just scared, right? Like
Mm.
she probably figured we just fucked this guy up in front of this girl.
Yeah.
There's gonna be consequences, right?
Hmm.
It wasn't her being like, no, fuck Ellie and Tommy. It was,
Yeah.
we can't have them coming after us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there was Owen, who wasn't on board with the whole thing to begin with,
Yeah.
and had been watching the girl he was kind of in love with beating this man to death.
Hmm.
At what point Mel and Owen left the room,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he'd had enough. He was like, no, we came for one person, you got what you wanted, stop.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And one thing that really like just shattered me when I first played it was when Owen said, if we kill them, we're no better than he was.
Mm.
That was when it clicked for me. I was like, oh, these are just people, these are just kids.
Yeah.
Like they had a mission and they accomplished it, and now they're scared, and
Hmm.
they're like, what do we do? Like, I
Yeah. Yeah.
felt that panic of like this group of kids who brutalized this man,
Hmm.
and now we're like, fuck.
Yeah. What do you think about the argument where, because it's like some people are like, I don't mind that they killed Joel. It's like I can't forgive Abby because she like tortured Joel. Like it's that I've seen that point sort of thrown around a lot as well, because it's again why some people can't quite come around to Abby's side, because she did that, whereas like Ellie's was going to be more. You don't know what Ellie would have done, but like it's, you kind of get the
No,
impression that Ellie would have just potentially just shot her and then left, kind of thing, not maybe drew it out. But you could never be sure of that. Like
I don't know
yeah.
about that. I don't
No,
know.
no, I feel like she, because especially by that point as well, she'd already like tortured Nora. It's like she's trying
Exactly.
to maybe take on like Joel's tactics as well. Like she tries the whole point to this spot on the map with Owen and Mel. So who knows what would have happened with Abby. So but like what do you, where do you kind of sit on that point about her torturing Joel maybe being the sort of pivotal point why some people don't can't quite swing round to her way of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. Like it's brutal.
Mhm.
It's horrendously, it's horrific, it's violent. It's like, and I think for her, like when they traveled to Jackson, they didn't know they were going to find Joel. They were looking for Tommy, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she received a tip about Tommy's whereabouts. So they had no idea that Joel was even there.
I did think about that because it's the Firefly connection, isn't it? Like obviously
Yeah.
Tommy used to be in with that group, and then because okay, I was thinking about that the
Yeah.
other day. Yeah, that makes sense.
So they weren't at all expecting to find Joel. So whether she had like a premeditated plan, I don't think so.
Hmm.
And I don't think she had a plan until Joel said, get it over with.
Yeah.
And she improvised. She looks around, right? She
Hmm.
finds the golf club.
Yeah. Yeah.
At first, she just has the gun. And it wasn't until he talked back to her that she said, no, tourniquet his leg,
Hmm.
which will stop him from bleeding out so that he dies faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And grabs the golf club because she finally finds this man and he has no remorse,
Hmm.
no fear.
Yeah.
Like he's just like, yep, get it over with. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that plus, everything she just learned about Owen expecting a child
Hmm.
and her maybe realizing that this is the guy who destroyed my life,
Yeah. Yeah.
took away my dad, who ruined my relationship, um, who has made it so that I haven't been able to sleep for 4 years.
Hmm.
Here he is in front of me and he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, she was angry
Hmm.
and she took it out on him.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's brutal. And I can totally understand why people would be just shocked and sickened
Hmm.
by that. And I've also seen people say, well, she did it in front of Ellie too.
Yeah.
And she basically made Ellie herself,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
and you see back to back, like when you switch that perspective back to Abby and you see her crying and screaming over her dad, and then you cut and you hear Ellie crying and screaming.
Yeah.
She did it.
Yeah. No.
She put Ellie in the same position.
Yeah, that whole scene is like again, sort of like a replay, brilliant. Like when you
So
switch that,
good.
especially like on the first time around, it's just pure rage by that point. The music, it's just this like ambient white noise basically while Ellie's just like, I'm gonna kill you guys, I'm gonna kill you, and then it cuts back to what was actually said in the room because like you don't know by
So
that point.
good.
It's
You
like
actually
just the
hear the conversation.
yeah, and you're kind of like, oh god, actually no, they kind of got off. Yeah, they could have been killed, but you kind of got off there at least. But by that
And
point,
you're
who
just
cares?
looking at Abby's face
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you see her realizing that she still feels empty and
yeah,
that it's not going to bring her dad back, and she's
yeah.
listening to this girl screaming for Joel,
Hmm.
and she's like maybe reminded of her own experience, and I think she's realizing like what
Yeah,
she's done.
that makes it better. Like doing it that way, because I mean, in the grounded like documentary as well, they do say they're originally going to do it so Ellie never like, doesn't watch Joel die. She just sort of turns up after the fact, like that. It's pulled off better her seeing it. And again, it gets you in that mindset of like, oh my god, I hate this. I hate this Abby person. Let's go to Seattle, and then obviously the rest of the game happens. But like, if you
Yeah.
kind of get there and it's like, oh, Joel's body's here. Like, what happened? It kind of I think they made the right decision there. Like I don't know how it could have translated like better if you didn't see it happen. Like it just gets you in
Yeah.
the right
I
mindset.
agree. I agree. I mean, you're as the player at that point, you are Ellie, right?
Yeah.
And so you're seeing everything that she's seeing.
Yeah.
And yeah, they've said, in the documentary, they wanted to paint Abby as this monster, right? And
Yeah.
they wanted to generate this anger and this hatred, and they definitely did it.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Like Ellie had to see it. Like if she hadn't seen it, I don't know how they could have followed the trajectory of her revenge as far as they did,
Hmm.
because she kept having those images in her head. She had
Yeah.
PTSD,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? If she hadn't seen it firsthand, I don't think they could have pulled that off as well.
No, no, I think they definitely made the right decision there. And it's just so interesting, like that documentary, just hearing about and like the director's commentary as well, like stuff that could have been in the game, but then they made the decision not to. Like it was like one of the ways Ellie would have lost her fingers would have been like just another situation where it's someone from Seattle who's like, relative that Ellie killed just comes and
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
like, I was like, oh God, like that would have been the point of like, oh my God, like how many more people are going to come after me? But obviously I guess maybe
I'm so
they,
glad they changed that. That would have
yeah,
felt so contrived and weird. Like,
yeah, I can imagine like it just be, oh God, the cycle, like it starts all over again. Like it to hammer that point home, I guess. But like, yeah, it's just bad that they did in such a brutal way that they did in the game. Like again, just as Neil Druckmann says, it's just the ultimate like, metaphor of what revenge gets you, and like pursuit at any cost gets you.
yeah.
Is just you can't play this thing that connected her to Joel, like she can't play guitar anymore. It's just
Well,
such a good.
and in a fucked up way, I hope it's okay that I'm swearing, by the
Yeah, no,
way.
that's fine. That's fine.
In a messed up way, like it's just one more thing that Abby took from her. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she took Joel, and then she took Ellie's ability to like connect with Joel in a more
Yeah,
cerebral way with the guitar.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, ultimately, it's Ellie's fault.
It's
Like,
yeah, it's like by that point as well. Like Abby had only, I suppose, she killed Jesse as well. So it's kind of she's killed two people that
yeah.
Ellie knew, but Ellie has killed like four or five of that Abby's known. So it's when do you get even? When is it like when do you call it quits? But obviously, there's no when it's like revenge is on the table. You just go again, just go wherever. It's the same with. I found it interesting with this replay, like the cutscene with like Isaac talking to like Manny and Abby about the attack on Haven, because it's kind of like, oh yeah, the whole like Scar versus WLF conflict is against that point of just revenge at any cost, or like just
Yeah.
complete destruction of the other side by any cost. And that like I'm looking forward to getting to Haven again, like replaying that whole level, because it is just like visually it's gorgeous, just the city on fire, but then that final like shot of Lev and Abby going away on the boat, and it's just them absolutely just decimating each other, and it's like there's just no winner here, like you know
No, and it's so pointless.
yeah, yeah,
It's so like that scene to me like really demonstrates so clearly like one of the main messages of the game, which is
mm-hmm.
that this humans are like, why do we just keep destroying each other over
Yeah,
pointless shit? Like, it's
yeah,
just land. Like,
mm-hmm.
you have your island, we've got our land. Let's leave each other alone.
Yeah,
Like, why? What are we fighting about?
yeah,
We're all just trying to survive at the end of the day.
yeah. For
Oh
the
man.
I was thinking that I was when on one of my interviews the other day, we were talking about the HBO show. Like, would you like to see them kind of delve into that background of like the whole WLLF and like Scar conflict? Because obviously the show's not been too afraid to sort of throw stuff in there that's not necessarily been in the games. Got they kind of did the whole Kansas City stuff rather than it being is it Petersburg they go? I keep forgetting the name of where they go to in
Pittsburgh in the
Pittsburgh.
game. In the
Yeah,
show, it was Kansas City.
yeah, so they obviously show like the overthrowing of Kansas City, like Fedra. So would you like to see sort of delving into why the Scars and like WLF hate each other, like just seeing that on screen?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they've done a great job in the first season of setting up a lot of the themes from part two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
And so I think as far as like introducing the scars and the WLF, I think they'll have to, because so much of the establishing moments in the game are done through like notes and
mm-hmm.
artifacts that you pick up as a
Yeah,
player, which they're not going to do in the show.
mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, they'll have to find another way, I think, to contextualize both factions, but also it depends on how much they're going to lean into like aligning the viewers with Ellie, because
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I think works so well about the game in the first few days of Ellie's days in Seattle is that you only know as much as she does,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And so you're kind of getting some context from the notes and stuff, but like she only learns about scars because she hears WLF calling her a scar.
yeah, yeah,
And so in the show, like I don't know if they're gonna just put us like fully just with Bella and we're just
mm-hmm.
learning things as they are,
Mm,
or if we're gonna get, establishing episodes with Isaac and the Seraphite leader or that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. I don't know I know
It.
there's a lot of rumors right now that Catherine O'Hara might be the leader of the Seraphites.
Okay, yeah, yeah. That.
Um, I don't I don't know. I
Mm,
don't know because they said she's in 3 episodes. That's a lot.
yeah.
So
Yeah, unless you're doing like a complete saga kind of thing. Because I mean, it's essentially she kind of starts up this like this movement, and then obviously they come to blows with like the WLF, and then she eventually ends up dying, which then kind of spurs on like the war and stuff. But yeah,
Well,
I
the WLF kill her.
yeah. So it'd be interesting to see like again with the whole because the second game is just so much bigger than the first game. Like there's so many different moving parts to it. Like what they're gonna do, like whether they're gonna split it into two. I mean, I imagine they are gonna do two seasons of television to try and fit it all in, but it's just how they're gonna structure it and build up like the world because as you say it's because it's so through like journal notes and just bits you can pick up in the world, like oh so that's why this happened, or in-game dialogue stuff like that. That just won't translate well into like a
Yeah.
TV show. The viewer needs to see this happen. So I guess like what's your in terms of like how they may structure like the show, what's your do you have like a go-to thing you'd want them to do, or are you like not sure how you'd like to see sort of that story translated onto like the show, like how you want them to tell that story?
I think the thing I feel strongest about is them sticking to their guns about Abby's story, like the way she's introduced and the concept of going from like blind hatred of somebody to developing empathy for them
Yep,
over the
yep.
course of their, I don't want them to change that.
Hmm.
Like I don't want you to learn about Abby first
Okay, yep,
before
yep,
before
yep.
she kills Joel. I just
Hmm.
think that that's completely a different story. And honestly, I don't see Neil Druckmann doing that because I think that could be
Hmm.
seen as some sort of admission that he fucked up with the game. And
Yeah, like
there's
backtracking almost to be like, oh no,
exactly.
sorry, we should have done it. Yeah, no, that
There's
that
no
makes
way
sense.
he's gonna do that.
No.
So that's the thing I feel strongest about. The rest of it, I don't know. I mean, like as I going back on what I said earlier about whether or not they'll just keep us with Bella, I think they have an opportunity in the show because obviously you're not playing a game as one character. They have an
Hmm.
opportunity to expand and to show
Yeah,
these different perspectives. They've already kind of done that with the first season. So
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
there's a precedent. So yeah, they might. And if they do make it 2 seasons of TV, which I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with more content, but it makes me nervous about how they're going to split it up.
Yeah, I almost don't want them to run into maybe like the problem the game had. Like if it's like Bella Ramsey's season like throughout, and then the final shot of the season is the like theater confrontation in the whole you killed my friends and then you wasted it. Cuts to black. It's like oh what's gonna happen here? And then like season 3 opens with it just being like Abby centric for however many episodes. I feel like it might be the same thing as the game, just like where that scene came about and many like players were like, I can't play this. I'm not sitting through this playing
yeah,
as Abby. Like whether you'd get TV viewers be like, I'm not watching a whole series of television about this character that I hate. I think they do need to try and work out a way for that to be avoided and obviously just get people to enjoy the whole picture without sort of
yeah,
hopping off early because that's the main thing I think they may struggle with and where they may need to juggle ever so slightly, like even if it's they like kill like do the same thing like introduce Abby then Joel dies, builds up Ellie's motivations, and I don't know whether they could maybe do it so it kind of maybe starts from Abby's point of view and they kind of maybe intersperse it more with like this is episode 3 is like Abby day one, then it's Ellie day one. It's kind of like I'm really struggling to see how they may do it. It's just I do always think about it, whether they just have to split into 2 seasons or if they could successfully do it with one, just because of how much there is in that game and how much they're trying to
yeah.
tell. It's a
I
it's a
mean, they
difficult
could
one.
they could they could do like a mid-season thing where
Mm.
we're aligned with Bella up until episode like 6 or something, and then we get the switch, and
Yeah.
then there's just more time with both
Hmm.
of them. They
Yeah.
could intersperse. Um, or they another thing I thought of is like, well, yeah, obviously there's the twist of Abby showing up at the theater and pointing the gun, but
Hmm.
then there's that whole bit of we learn who Abby is
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and why she killed Joel and
Hmm.
who her dad was, and we see Marlene again,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, maybe that would be like a cool cliffhanger to end the season
Mm.
on, because it's like, well, the first season ended with this massacre at the hospital,
Yeah.
and then maybe this season could end with revisiting that, but from
Mm.
the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
but then again, like you said, like there's the challenge of like coming back for a season 3 and being like,
Yeah.
well, here's Abby. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's because that's like, I love, like, I just love it in like games where you get that alternative perspective, like just seeing stuff from like the other character. Like it's the same with like I was saying it today, just replaying it and seeing like Abby's thing of that hospital corridor. I was like, because of this game, it's like become such an iconic like
Oh my
thing to
God,
look at. Just
yeah.
that Firefly emblem on the wall. I'm like, oh, I just love the
And the red
hospital.
door. And
Yeah,
it's
it's,
just,
and I just like the alarms wearing as well. It's like such an iconic like thing. It's just such great like to see. And like when I first played it, and you get that flashback first of all with Abby, and then it's like cuts. It just kind of no big reveal. It just kind of like you see the Salt Lake Hospital in the background. You're like, oh no, this is
yeah,
where we are. And then obviously it plays out, and you're like, okay, now I understand why she did what she did. But like that reveal as such is just such a good thing to see
it's
on
so good.
screen.
And it's so interesting to see like where different people like figure it out.
Yeah.
Like for some people, they see the hospital and they're like, "Oh fuck, I didn't even notice the hospital." I think of my first one. It
Yeah.
wasn't until like Owen said to Jerry, like, "You've got to get down there," and then I
Hmm.
was like, "He called him Doc," and then
Yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Wait!" And then I remembered the guy from like the very beginning when Joel is like explaining it to Tommy with the
Mm,
scalpel, and I was like,
yeah.
"It's all
No,
coming together."
I know it is brilliant. It's like I was thinking this the other day with like the flashbacks as well, because obviously I think the flashback placement for like Ellie sections is really good, like where they are, because it's a good bit of like reprieve as such from just all the crap she's seen in
It's
Seattle.
slaughter.
Yeah. So do you think they could maybe like do the same thing, like sort of interplace them as like flashbacks, or would it be because I it's like another thing I get, like I don't know whether they would, if they would just openly kill Joel in like the first or like second episode, like whether they would try and like establish like, oh, there was a bit of happy times before this, and then like the doubt between Ellie and Joel rises a bit, and it's again like that weird one. I feel like because when's the museum scene going to be? That's like where are you going to put
Oh,
that? And like I really want that to be like pulled off well in the show, because I playing it like replaying it this time around. It's like it's just so good. Like I love these two characters together, and it makes it all the more sad. That's the whole point of like the flashbacks is kind of like, oh, I really miss Joel, and it's almost like by that point reminding Ellie why she's doing
yeah.
what she's doing. But yeah, I just because where do you kind of sit on like obviously Bella and like Pedro's chemistry versus Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson? Because I know for me, like I prefer the game counterparts more. I just don't feel that like they just didn't click as much for me as like the game counterparts do. And like when I was watching the museum scene, I was like, God, I really hope this gets pulled off well, because it's like just such a good character interaction between the two of them.
Yeah, I think as far as the order of the flashbacks, I think it's really important that like that they're placed so intentionally and we get information throughout Ellie's journey that kind of starts to recontextualize like learning halfway through or at the end of Seattle day 2 that she already knew what Joel did the whole time
Yeah, yeah,
was like, are you kidding me?
yeah,
Like we just tortured somebody and you already knew,
mm,
like, or suspected at least
yeah, yeah,
why.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I think as he's and it is kind of like a reprieve from like just the slog and the slaughter and like getting these glimpses. And I think for Ellie, it's that too. It's like, she's going through all this misery, but then, every now and then she kind of gets this memory of better times better.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
they're not actually better.
No,
Even
no,
even the birthday scene, it ends on
yeah,
that firefly,
yeah.
So yeah, and I mean I know people I've seen some people say, oh, maybe they'll kill Joel at the end of the season and they'll use all the flashbacks and like,
Mm,
but I'm like, there's not enough to fill a whole season.
no, no.
They'd have to make up a whole bunch of and I think obviously people want more time with Pedro, which I understand, but
Mhm.
I foresee them killing him in episode 1.
Yeah, I would. Again, we won't know until it comes out, but I would be interested. That's one particular thing as well. It's like how. what are they going? Because like I've got like family members who haven't played the games, and they're like, "Oh, so where is what's the second season going to be like?" And I'm just like, I can't tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
I just like because I'm kind of interested just to see how they put it off and how my family react to not playing the games. I just where they kind of sit on everything. So it's an interesting thing from that perspective, just to see how the TV audience gets on versus like what the video game people have known for like 3, 4 years. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
the TV audience also aren't going to be waiting as long between
Yeah.
seasons as we did between
Yeah.
games.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think also in the TV show they did a pretty good job of setting up that massacre at the hospital of, ooh, this doesn't
Mm.
feel good.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like and I watch a lot of like like reactions on YouTube, and a lot of people who never played the game, and they're all
Mm.
like, I don't know about this, Joel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then of course with the lie, it
Hmm.
just like people we can debate the whole morality of the Firefly thing over and over again,
Yeah.
but the lie to me is much more, no, he fucked up. That was
Yeah.
not right. That was not the
Yeah.
right thing to do.
Yeah.
And it was selfish.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe people will be, because I mean, and it's interesting because when I played the second game, like as soon as you're on the Overlook with Owen and Abby, and they're like, oh, they start talking about this man that they're looking for.
Hmm.
I was like, well, it's got to be Joel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who else is it going to be? So I think a TV audience is going to be much more like, well, he kind of had it coming.
Mm.
I don't know,
Yeah. No.
but is it messed up to say I hope they kill him in episode 1?
I don't know. I don't know. If everything afterwards pans out all right, then we can look
Mm,
at. Or yeah. Otherwise, we'll be looking back, being like, "Ah, should have left it a couple episodes, and then you could have done it this way." But I hope it pulls through. It's just interesting to see what they end up like just doing with. Yeah, again, just this massive story, like where
yeah.
whether they're going to change a lot or because it's going to be like the TV audience, like they're going to have to make up their opinion on where they sit with like Abby versus Ellie whenever that climax happens, if it's in this series or if they end up doing like another series after this. um so I'm just looking through the questions I've got for yourself because I haven't actually looked at my list at all.
Oh,
We've kind of just been
all good.
um because I mean, to be fair as well, when I was talking to one of my family members about the TV show, he was asking like, "Oh, so does the second game wrap things up?" And I was like, "Well, they've done a documentary now. They say there might be a third one." So I saw your reaction to it. Obviously, very very excited that this this is a possibility that they may even be making a third one. So I was going to ask because it's almost weird hearing him talk about it. It's like a vision he's had from like God or something. It's like, oh, it's like
Yeah,
it's like
literally.
it's like I was mulling on this for a while, and then suddenly the concept came to me, and I was like, oh, what's the concept, Neil? Like, what do you think that could possibly be? Like, what would you like to see from a third like Last of Us game?
Oh my God, I have so many thoughts. I've been like like thinking of where they could possibly go with the third installment since the second one came out. I have like a whole notebook full of
Mm,
ideas. Um, but I'm also not surprised that it's taken them so long to think of a
yeah,
concept, because it's just like, yeah, I mean, they kind of left it somewhat open at the end, but also not in so many
yeah,
ways.
yeah.
And like he said, if they never made a third game, I think it'd be okay.
It's the same as like if they never made a second game because it's sort of like
Yeah,
the
exactly.
first game ends on that line. It's kind of like, oh, I wonder where things go from here, but might not necessarily need to be answered. And then obviously they made
Yeah.
a second one. So now I completely get what you mean by that.
The first game left a lot of room, I think, but
Hmm.
also it didn't demand more, you
No,
know?
no,
Um, as far as the third game goes, I think, like he said before, the first game is about just stripping it back, simplifying it as much as possible. The first
yeah,
game is about love.
hmm,
The second game is about hate, more or less.
yeah, yeah,
So I was like, what would be like one word to sum up like a third installment?
mm.
And the one that stuck out to me the most was hope, because
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
obviously the second game is such a misery
yeah,
and
yeah,
focuses so much on like the worst parts of humanity.
hmm.
I was like, what if the third game is about humanity's resilience,
Okay,
is about the good things, is about like, how we can come together and like rebuild. And what would that look like?
Mm.
Because I think another thing they could maybe look at is like who are the last of us?
Okay, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
is it like the last of humanity,
Mm.
or is it the last of the people who remember the old world?
Okay, yeah, 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 yeah. That's
And
interesting.
there could be this struggle between like the older generation
Mm.
versus the newer one who were born into this world, and
Yeah.
so this is all they know. And like,
Mm.
you know, Abby says at the end of the game, like the Fireflies, their goal was always to restore society, but it's like that society doesn't exist,
Yeah.
and it's not going to work now. And
Mm.
there could be an interesting tension between like the older generation trying to reestablish that
Yeah.
society, which is not going to work in this context, and
Yeah.
the younger generation being like, well, no, like that's stupid. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So I think there could be that kind of friction,
yeah.
old generation and new. um and and as far as Ellie goes, like figuring out like what she wants, like she's kind of in charge of her own life for the first time
Hmm.
ever
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
She doesn't have anybody put like just cargoing her across the
Hmm.
country. She doesn't have this vendetta driving her.
Yeah.
She's alone. And
Hmm.
so, and I know that was her biggest fear, but I think it also presents her the opportunity to like actually figure out who the fuck she is and what she
Mm.
wants.
No, that's true. That's true. I think it didn't. It was when like I was thinking like, oh, what could they even do in the last just three? Like I had like a story point come to mind, which could be like interesting in a way. It'd be like if Ellie met like another immune, maybe like another immune like kid. I
Yeah.
thought, and it could be like if they almost ended it like on the same choice again, like but this kid actually gets to have the say in like whether they can save the world. And obviously it's sort of Ellie could almost have like another Joel moment and like, you know, stop this from happening completely. But it's sort of like, no, Joel never gave me the choice. So I need to let this person have the choice. And then it's still like my like it's still kind of like her life mattering like as well, like
Yeah.
in her
That
mind,
would
because
be
that,
really significant.
but it'd be, you know, how they pull that off. I feel like they could throw like another immune person in there, but it's obviously other stuff's got to other stuff's got to happen in the game. That was the one point where I was like, oh, they could do maybe something with that, because it is one of her biggest, not like regrets in a way, but obviously she really wanted her life to matter. Obviously Joel's whole point about her life mattering was just that she gets to live in like this
Yeah.
society. But it's sort of like, you know, if there was like another kid who wanted the same thing Ellie did at that point, could Ellie just, you know, sort of sit back and let them make that choice and just not interfere? Because then it kind of almost leads back into like your thing of like of the old versus new. It's kind of like for this old society to come back, this like this kid who's known nothing but the new world just will never get to see that happen
Yeah.
either. Like it's sort of having to sacrifice yourself for, you know, society to come back to the way it previously was and just, you know, adapting to it. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see where they go from here. Even in that documentary, like them mentioning like the Tommy light side story,
Yeah, that was so weird.
I was like, what's Tommy got really to do? Because I mean, it'd be an interesting like, you know, thing to go into. But I mean, he's obviously his life's kind of falling apart just because of the whole his
He's
revenge
lost
story.
everything.
Yeah.
He's lost everything. Everything. And this, like, we can talk about Tommy if you want, but yeah, he's lost. I don't know how they could possibly pick it up with him because I feel like, as you said, like,
No.
what does he have? Nothing.
No.
Um, and I mean, another theory that I have that I would love to see, I don't know, is it's interesting you mentioned another immune kid because that's something I thought of. And what if you actually play as that kid
Yeah.
and somehow he or she or they meet Ellie
Yeah. Yeah.
and and Ellie becomes the Joel
Yeah.
in
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
that relationship because we've seen the like, you know, Joel and Ellie, Abby and Lev dynamic
Mhm.
in these two games, but you're always playing as the older one.
Yeah.
So what if this time you're the kid and you're looking up to Ellie
Yeah.
as like your Joel? I think that would be a really cool way of like keeping Ellie in the story,
Hmm.
but passing it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's and what you said about, you know, maybe if it ends up being about immunity, which I don't know, it might not,
Yeah.
because the second game wasn't really about her immunity at all.
No. No.
Um, but the idea of her giving somebody else the choice that she never got,
Hmm.
that's really that could be really healing for her, I think.
Yeah, it ramps up her. I say it's the thing that she never got to do, but like there is someone else who could do that.
Yeah.
It'd be because I mean, especially as well, like, the second game does kind of set up that the Fireflies are still around.
Yeah.
So whether like if like Abby comes back into it and they kind of like team up almost, and it's kind of how they do that, like it could be like, oh, I've met this immune kid, we need to get them to the Fireflies because they might still be looking at Cure and they maybe team up to get there. But again, I'm not Neil Druckmann. I'm just right because I've seen quite a few people say that like an Abby. I've seen concept art for like an Abby Ellie team up, like obviously they reconcile and go from there. So that would be interesting to see. I mean, how they'd because so much has happened between the two of them for them to sort of write that into the story would be interesting to like. Do you think they could ever like? Would you like to see that, or would you?
I would love to see
Mhm.
it. In terms of if it would ever actually happen. I don't know. I've been racking my brain for years about like how they could possibly make that happen in a way that wouldn't feel so contrived and like
You could,
fanficky, for
yeah,
lack of a better term.
yeah, because you could almost do it like it's almost like a friend, like an alliance out of like necessity. Like again, if you throw like an immune kid in there, it could be like, look, Abby, your dad wanted to make a cure. This could see your dad's dream through, whilst also like fixing the problems that like Ellie has. So it could almost be that, but obviously, whether that kind of thing would happen, that's the only way I could maybe see like them two sort of forging like an alliance and sort of like, look, we've had history, we don't like each other, but this kid could accomplish both of our sort of our unfinished business kind of thing, or like stuff that we've experienced in our lives, sort of patch that up and maybe make things better. And but it'd be,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, I don't
It
know.
would depend entirely on like what each of their goals are going
Yeah,
forward,
yeah,
Like do either of them even give a shit about the cure anymore?
yeah, yeah.
Um, and would would Abby even be in a third game is something else I've thought about. I mean, obviously I will be so devastated if she's not, but I could just as easily see them not because
I yeah, yeah, I could see because I mean, obviously, Naughty Dog's whole thing. I found that really interesting. Like in the, I think it might have been your video actually posted about them doing the director's commentary in the credits because it was obviously them reflecting on the whole experience, and it was like Neil Druckmann's statement of like, almost like Joel, I would do this all over again, but I wouldn't put the actors through that. Like I can put them through this again. Like it's obviously I'd have to give you guys that choice. Like if you wanted to join me again to make this story, but then I just don't know whether because they've made they've stuck by the decisions made in the second game. Whether they said, look, we're making a third game, you can play as Abby, deal with it. Like this is it's our story to tell. It would. I get what you mean. It's hopefully they don't cave into like pressure to be like, oh, Abby was the one character is kind of like such a divisive aspect of that game. Do we, can we bring it back for a game? Do we, will we get the response we want for that? Like it would be interesting
well,
to
I
see.
think I think their decision whether or not to bring her back would entirely hinge on the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like more so than any
Mm-hmm.
audience response. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
think he I mean, yeah, I think in a way, like they learned a lot from The Last of Us too, and I think
Yeah.
they might be more prepared to like anticipate reaction and protect their people. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting that he said at the end, I wouldn't put an actor through that again. But it's like, well, you're making a show and you've just cast a new actor to play Abby, so
Yeah, yeah. Which obviously
um,
that's had its own that's had its own responses. Again,
oh
now like
God,
I know I've had my thoughts, and it's like no, I'm sure when it comes down to it, because I had the same thing with Bella Ramsey. The acting side of things will completely pull through, and it'll be they'll do a fantastic job. And I don't no hate on them for like just the fact that they're playing a character who's going to do something you disagree with. Like you shouldn't get mad at them for doing that. I mean, I know for me it was just like the physicality thing. Like I'm sure even then she could like Caitlin Denver could just bulk up and do it. But I know that was my
yeah,
main thing. She's kind of like, oh okay, like that's interesting. You've gone down this route when obviously Abby's like physicality is such a big like one of the big things about her character, and I think that makes her like stand out, makes her unique, and obviously even that caused like its own discourse online, like obviously when the
Yeah.
leaks came back, it like came about, and it was, I found it so mind-boggling at the time, where it's like, oh, this, you know, it was obviously like, oh, there's a trans person kill Joel, and it's like, no, you're just assuming that. There's no, again, you're going off no context here. I was like, what is the internet doing? Like, what are we thinking about? Like, just, you know,
The
so
trans misogyny is just
yeah,
so disgusting.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I feel a little disappointed too, just because, as you said, it is such a big part of Abby's character in the game, and
mhm,
it's you know, the physical manifestation of her trauma,
yeah,
and it is something that makes her so unique. And especially as a woman, you know, like seeing different body types and seeing somebody who's unconventional
yeah,
be like the protagonist in a video game is it's
mhm,
huge.
yeah,
And you know, I was a little bit like, oh, but also like we haven't seen her do the part.
yeah,
And I know she's a good actor. And so I'm sure she'll be able to pull it off, whether or not she, you know, bulks up for the role. We'll
yeah,
see, right?
yeah,
Um, but as I've said, I think in a couple of my videos, like they'll still be able to tell Abby's story without that.
hmm,
It'll be
yeah,
a shame, but it's not the end of the world. And
no,
also
yeah,
Abby is so much more than her body and her muscles, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, so I think it's way more important that they can capture her essence and her
yeah,
emotion and her, you know, um, yeah, I can understand why some people are disappointed, but I think it's also been really discouraging to see like so much of the negative discourse and the hatred coming from like within the Last of Us community and the people who actually like Abby.
yeah,
It's like, why are you setting this girl up? Like she already is gonna have so much working against her.
yeah.
It's like she needs the support of people who actually like the character,
Yeah, exactly. But
you know?
yeah, and because it was such a heartbreaking thing to hear Laura Bailey talk about her. I mean, because you know, at
Oh
the time as
God,
well,
yeah.
like I remember at the time when it happened, I was like, what? Like, why are people going after her? Like, you know, just leave her alone. And then like the documentary sort of raising the point that even just like her newborn kid got
Her
involved.
baby.
It's just like, why? Like they like none of them like deserve it, you know, like they're, you know, I don't know. Yeah,
Even the writers who actually were responsible for those decisions don't deserve that level
no,
of vitriol and death threats.
no,
Like y'all, it's a story.
yeah,
Like, and these are people.
yeah,
Like, just I understand having strong reactions to it, obviously, but
yeah,
like the fact that people can't, and I mean, you have to think about who the people are who are gonna do stuff like that.
hmm,
And they're
yeah,
probably young
yeah,
and they're probably just following internet discourse on
hmm,
Reddit or whatever,
yeah.
and not thinking about the fact that they're talking to actual humans.
Yeah, I know, especially at the time, it was just like, you know, because it split like the internet in half as such. Like, you either hated the game or loved it. Like, you know, it became cool to hate The Last of Us 2. It's
Yeah.
just like you just don't need to do stuff like that. You know, just like have your opinion, leave it there. You really don't need to abuse these people because I imagine. I mean, I can't remember back to the time, but like, you know, it's not like Troy Baker or like and like, you know, Ashley Johnson got hate for like anything their characters did in the game. It was purely just this new person comes in, kills a fan favorite character, so then it must be that they're the villain. Where it's like,
Yeah.
you know, obviously, like again, like an interesting point in the documentary was like Neil Druckmann having to tell Troy Baker they were going to kill Joel, and it was like he like Troy Baker heard like one of his friends had died just because the part was so close to his heart. Like he, you know, he could have put completely like kicked off and been like, no, you're not killing me. Like Joel's staying in the game. Like could have caused such like a uproar to be and you know potentially like you know change their minds, but no, like Troy Baker was cool with it and like all these
Yeah.
actors were cool with it. But like especially with like video game development, like so many people put their heart and soul into this, you know, this project. Like I know it's the same with like films and stuff, but like watching like gaming documentaries, there's like, you know, there's like just everything they put into it is just absolutely
It's
insane.
hundreds of people, hundreds
Yeah,
and like people always blame Neil Druckmann, but it's like he's one. Yeah, the idea was his, but he had to convince the whole studio, hundreds of people.
yeah.
And it's interesting at the beginning of the documentary, you see him explaining the story to all the devs, and they're all like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, yeah,
So, but he had to like, and you know, it's interesting what you said about Troy because they have a relationship, they trust each other.
yeah,
You know, like, and Neil. yeah, he was able to convey his vision and get everybody on board. And like you said, that's hundreds of people believing in this story
Yeah.
and working for years on it. It's like if they didn't believe in it, they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Yeah. I found it really interesting, like the why, like, because I think for ages like no one knew who leaked the game, and then it comes out to being that it was just a fan of,
Ugh,
trying to force their hand to release the game early. Like that was
what
such
kind
a
of logic is that? God,
yeah. So
so
this
stupid.
game's not finished. I'll leak the game, and then they can just magically finish it and then release
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
that's how it works.
yeah. It's just absolutely mind-boggling, and just it is sad as well because just like whether that person even intended for this to have like the impact it did on the game and like people's opinions on the game. Like they could have seen those leaks and like thought, oh, this is really really good stuff. I'm liking what they're doing with this, and I'll put this out, and then suddenly you know quite a lot of people don't like that, and you're kind of like, oh god, what have I
Yeah.
done? Because it was just absolute, it really really good documentary. I loved the first one they did on the first game, so just seeing the fact that they did one for the second game was just
Oh, I
so,
loved it. And
yeah,
we needed it. We needed it. It felt like closure in so many ways, you
yeah,
know? And I loved that moment where Neil, he talked about his whole emotional process of like finding out about the leaks and how he was so angry and he wanted that person to be punished. And then he was like, you know what? We got to learn from the
mhm,
message of our game, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
forgiveness, let it go. Like, see, understand his perspective, as fucked up as it was,
hmm,
and the fact that they paralleled him talking about that with Ellie like beating up Abby and then deciding to let her go. Getting emotional just thinking about it. Like the
yeah,
parallel they drew, I was like, oh, okay, you're right. God damn it.
yeah, no,
you
exactly,
know? Um, but man, I felt for them. Like, and him talking about how they were in the pandemic trying to finish the game and he was
yeah.
isolated and dealing with all this hate and oh man.
Because it was like the bit as well when like the game like released like before the review scores came out, and it was him like obviously he'd seen the reaction the internet had, and he like calls Troy Baker to be like, have I done the right thing here? And then Troy Baker's like, what are you talking about? Like, I loved it. Like, it was brilliant. It's kind of like,
Or even before that, like what before the game had even come out, and Neil's like, "Did I fuck up, Troy?" And he's like, "I don't know. I haven't played the game yet."
yeah, yeah, that's so good. Like, it's again just that wholesome, like, just connection they have, like, just working on this thing for so many years, and just I just really don't feel like you see that with like another medium compared to like just video game like making. Just the connection they all have together. Like, it was just really really nice to see. And I know you posted the clip on your channel when it was them recording Joel's death scene, and just
Oh
how
God.
being in that room with like everyone, and just like Ashley Johnson's performance, like getting to everybody, and you're just like, oh man, like to be in that room and just watch that unfold. It did. I just love mocap stuff. Anything where you get to see the actors behind it is just
Yeah.
fantastic.
I'm so grateful that they shared
Hmm.
that with us. I think it was just missing. And like I said, like it felt like closure in so many ways because and they kind of mentioned in the director's commentary at the end too how they had a lack of closure when the game came out
Yeah,
because it came out in the pandemic. So it's not like they could have their release party. It was
yeah,
just like, okay, this thing we've worked on for years is out and it's getting all this hate and we're just alone at home.
yeah,
And I think for us as the audience, like I felt that too.
hmm,
And so I think, yeah, getting some questions answered and finally getting this game getting the attention that I feel it didn't really get. It's like they kind of
yeah,
released it and they pulled back,
yeah,
which understandably.
yeah,
But I feel like now they're kind of coming back to it and there's this sense of acceptance and healing and you
hmm,
could feel it.
yeah,
And yeah, getting to see Laura and like the Salt Lake crew actors
hmm,
in the mocap. I
yeah,
think I said in my reaction video, like it just kind of pulls back this layer. It allows us to see them and
hmm,
so their performance comes through in the mocap for sure, but it's so different just actually seeing a human face
yeah,
do it
hmm.
and giving us that access. I think yeah, I'm so grateful that they put that in.
Because like your background, you're a game cinematographer, am I right? Yeah. So because like
Yeah.
for obviously like you in that particular like occupation, like watching that, like were you kind of like watching certain bits of the documentary and you're like, huh, I've had to, I know exactly what they're talking about. I've had to go through that, like how,
Yeah.
like, because you've got that sort of unique viewpoint on obviously being in that industry. Like, what was it? What did it feel like for you, like watching the behind the scenes kind of stuff?
It was cool. I mean, I think I just released my reaction video. There's a couple of moments where I'm like, oh, that's relatable. Oh, like at the beginning when they're going through the reveal trailer, like
Mm,
shot by shot,
yeah.
and being like, oh, this looks weird, or just making sure it's perfect. Like that I can
Mhm.
relate to. I kind of do that in my line of work because you know that people are gonna go frame by frame
Yeah.
in a trailer and pick things apart.
Mm.
So that was relatable. Just seeing they kept each time they showed like the ceiling with all the wires
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
traveling. I was like, yeah, like it's just like a met. There's just wires everywhere, data like above your
Yeah.
head. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get that. Seeing all the PS5 dev kits
Mm.
stacked and them like putting together the work from home kits with everything. I was like,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm currently on my work from home setup, so I
Mm.
get it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm not really on the development side per
Right.
se
Right.
at
Yep.
at
Yep.
my job, so I'm sure there's stuff that I missed, but yeah, just one of the conversations I loved in the documentary was when Neil was showing them an unfinished level, and he was talking about all the logistical things, like, okay, if we've got people coming at us from behind it, but we're on this horse,
Yeah.
okay, we've got to get off the horse, but then where does the horse go? And what does Dina do?
That
Like
was so good. Yeah, like
it
I
was
was like,
fascinating.
yeah, yeah. It's honestly just brilliant. And like the bit as well where like the guy was doing the overcast look in like the levels,
Yeah.
trying to like achieve that, and he was like, oh god, like it's stressing me out. And then they like sort of managed to toggle it and get it right, and he was like, oh, thank God that like warrants all this hard work that I put into it. Like it's just it can be such a grueling like process just watching these people just sort of slave away trying to make this game as perfect as they can. Even like the audio like recording, like them getting the sound effects or like how does blood drip on a certain surface, and it's like
That part was so cool.
yeah, yeah, because I was like, I'd seen like a video on it like a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh my god, they like just what? Like you didn't need to do this, but like that's just what puts Naughty Dog like just at the top
The
of.
level of detail.
Yeah, exactly. It's just crazy, and again, it's just like, oh, I can't believe they had a guy just get a wet rag, just pretend to be as pretend to be infected, and just
The
bite that.
commitment to
Yeah,
like, I was like, get that guy in a mocap suit. He needs to be a runner. Like,
and
holy
like the
crap.
guy doing the audio, and I was like
Yeah.
like the guy who was like a pretty like listen to him, I'm pretty sure he was like one of the shamblers, and I was like
Yeah.
that sounds familiar, and it was just like my god, like just the stuff he was able to come out with, and it's just all brilliant, just how all these different departments and like things come together and just create such a like polished and just fantastic product. Like at the end of the day, it's just so many good moving parts that just create just a good, it's like a work of art, like it literally
It
like all
is.
all the stuff that
It's
goes
the
into it.
amalgamation of all of those hundreds of people's work. And I'm also glad in the documentary they addressed some of the studio changes they've made
Mhm.
since and how they've eliminated crunch and that they're really
Yeah,
prioritizing people's mental health and their
yeah.
work-life balance. Because the sense that I got watching that was like, man, these people are just they're working. They're working, 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 work. Like, do
Hmm.
you stop?
Yeah, yeah,
They're all so committed. And I mean that, yeah, that's commendable.
yeah,
But it's like I was so concerned I was
yeah,
concerned for some of them, like they were
yeah.
burning out.
Because it's like as well, like watching it versus like movies and stuff like that. Like a movie, like you film it, then you can put the trailer together, and then you can just release that. But like for a game, you've got to like keep interest up. So it's like even though the game's not finished yet, we need to like put together a trailer to release it this time. But it's like, oh wait, no, we can't quite finish it for that time. So it's just all just the deadlines that they had and just how they couldn't meet them, and obviously the game meaning to like come out in like 2018, and that just
I
never
laughed.
happened. It's just
No.
like absolutely mental, and like, oh, E3's coming up, we should do a demo for this. We can't do the demo. Okay, we'll try again next year. Like it's just that side of things. Like you just don't see it again. Just any other industry, you just don't see that. Like we really need to try and get this out because we need people to be interested in. Obviously, look to buy our like product at the end of the day. It's just such a
Well, see
interesting thing.
that, and that was like really relatable for me because I make trailers,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so I know like how much time just goes into a trailer alone, like months
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Like most of my mandates are like 8 weeks long. It's 2 months. Um, So they're doing that, and they have to make sure it's flawless
Hmm.
because they're having all this external pressure and people
Yeah.
calling them out on things, which is like fuck off, you know.
Yeah.
But also, and then they're also still working on the game at the same time.
Yeah, I know. What did because I know that when like the game first came out is a big thing about the trailers and obviously them swapping out character models for, to make them look different. Where because yeah, where do you kind of sit on that kind of thing? Because I don't think I'd ever seen like a studio do that, like particularly until like Naughty Dog did it. And it was kind of like, oh yeah, maybe they shouldn't have done that. Like,
It's interesting, like so much of the trailer was about their marketing and how it was a lot of it was so intentional and carefully thought out, but they didn't mention that one trailer at all.
no, no.
Um, and I mean they address it in the director commentary. They talk
Yeah.
about it when they get to that scene. And I think that was one moment where, yeah, they messed up.
Hmm.
And Neil basically said that. He was like, in hindsight, probably wasn't the best choice. I think they were so panicked to throw people off the scent of Joel dying
Yeah.
because they wanted to protect the story so bad. Like that was
Yeah.
their intention. It wasn't to like deceive people or be
Yeah.
like, it was we don't want people to guess because if they guess, it's gonna ruin like it's gonna
Yeah.
kind of ruin their experience of the story, you know? So I think one thing they could have done to mitigate that whole thing is if, and I mean this would change so much, but this is just a theory of mine, is like
Yeah.
what if Ellie had turned around in the game and it was Joel?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
she's kind of like, whoa, what the fuck? And then it's Jesse. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, technically that bit in the trailer is still in the
It's,
game. It's
yeah.
just not the
Yeah.
context that, it would maybe
Yeah.
would have felt less deceptive.
Yeah. Because
Um,
I like for like pre-release stuff, like obviously theorize like theories and stuff like that. It's such a big thing like before because you're trying to piece it together to yourself beforehand. So I almost feel like for some of the bits because they basically update the old like flashback character models to present day to make it like look like it's current day Ellie and Joel. It's kind of like I feel like they could have maybe left a couple of bits like that because then you could maybe be like, oh no, I guess Joel does die, but there's quite a lot of him in this trailer, like between him and Ellie, so there must be quite a lot of like flashbacks that like manages
or he
expect.
doesn't die till the end,
Yeah,
like
yeah, like
a lot of
manages
people
like
thought that.
yeah, like manages your expectations like a little bit, so you're kind of like, all right, I'm pretty sure Joel is going to die, but it's sort of as and when we don't know. But it was definitely like interesting because I was kind of like, oh yeah, wow, they really just because they do it as well with like Ellie, which that was the one I didn't mind, whereas like her and her Seattle get up like drowning unknown
Mm,
person, so you kind of like that, that's fine, that makes sense, but
that's
like
okay. That kind of
yeah,
thing is like, it was so challenging. Like how do you market a game where the inciting incident is the main character's death?
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
how
and
and
yeah,
the reveal and the secret second protagonist.
yeah.
Like how do you market that?
Because then it was like a few months afterwards, then they could do like an Abby trailer, and then it's like, oh,
Yeah,
now
which they
there's this
did.
character. But
Yeah.
yeah, because obviously they
It
did like the Paris Game Weeks one where that's like where Abby first gets shown, and like
iconic.
you don't know. Like I'm watching that thing as well when it's like, oh, we didn't reveal Abby's name at that point. I was like, I literally forgot, but then it reminded me. Yes, people were like theorizing that that was Ellie's mum at the
Yeah.
time, and I remember the tweet where it was like the blanked out like name, and I was like, oh my god, that was good marketing, just to again sort of get people talking, get people thinking, who is this new character, what's going to happen here, and
Yeah.
I have to buy the game to find out. Like that was so like that element was like really good, and I was like, yes, that's a memory unlocked for me for me.
And it's so crazy. Like I remember I watched that trailer obviously when it came out. I think I only watched it once and I was like, okay, who the hell are these people?
Yeah.
And then I completely forgot about it until I was playing the game and I got to that scene.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it wasn't even until Lev jumped out where I was
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, I've seen this before.
Yeah, like I think in the run up, like I was getting like a bunch of themes on my PS4, and there was one of like the flaming car, and
Mm,
I was like, oh, what's that there for? It says it's a Last of Us 2 theme, so there must be something here. And then it was like, oh wait, there was a trailer for it, and then you play the game, and you're like, that's why it's there. That makes complete sense.
that scene is just incredible. Like everything about it,
Mhm.
especially like, I mean, I'm obviously a cinematographer, so the cinematography in that scene, the fact that it's all one shot,
Yeah. Yeah.
ugh, it's so good. And that the seamless transition into gameplay. And
Yeah.
I mean, and I think part of what we were talking about earlier was like Abby's day one and how it's so much exposition and it's just like, okay,
Yeah.
where's this going? Like
Hmm.
what is this girl's deal? What's her
Yeah.
story? And we still don't really like, yeah, we kind of learn, okay, she's going after Owen, but we don't actually know what her internal story is until
Yeah.
he meets these kids.
Hmm.
And I think it's so interesting watching people play the game and they get to that forest scene and they see her hanging and like when she does the triangle hold with her legs
Yeah. Yeah.
and then she stands up with the hammer. It's so interesting seeing so many people being like, okay, she's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can't you have to respect at
Yeah.
least that scene,
Yeah, exactly. No, that
you
is.
know?
I'm looking for.
Uh
To be fair, I'm like pretty much near that point in my replay because I was thinking, oh, hopefully I can get to that before we do the interview. I was like, oh no, there's actually quite a lot of like gameplay to get there. So I was like, oh damn it. Let's.
yeah.
But yeah, no, that bit is so yeah, just so good, and that's one of the things that helps to make Abby. She gets like a lot of good set pieces like in the
Yeah.
game. Like there's a few like with the HBO show, like I'm looking forward to seeing how they do like the Rat King, like hope
Oh my
like
God.
and
The
like
sky bridge too.
yeah, like the Sky Bridge and like even like little things like the Shamblers and stuff like that. Like, are they going to get into the game? And like again, like Haven, just like it being on fire like that. That's like one I'm really keen to like see in the show. Just like look brilliant. Like I really hope that gets pulled off.
Yeah.
Like okay, so yeah, Abby does. She gets so good. I know I've seen like a few people be like, oh, Ellie doesn't really get many of her own like set pieces or like her weapons. Like she doesn't get many of her own weapons in the game. It's kind of like I don't know. I feel like this game kind of pushes Abby to be the protagonist of this game. Like really, like it's Abby's story at the end of the day. So it's kind of like you
Mhm.
get obviously her bits, but yeah, it's interesting. Like she does definitely she gets like her own boss fight. She gets obviously the Haven bit, but then like Ellie's kind of had a game of set pieces by that point. Like she's had all these things happen to her, and all the bits in Seattle that she's had so far. Like she has just her little moments, and then Abby obviously gets some bigger stuff just because she hasn't had that experience like in terms of what we've seen as like a game, like a game player.
Yeah, and it's also like their play styles are so different too,
Yeah.
right? Like, and they really wanted Abby to kind of parallel Joel
Hmm.
in a lot of ways, and also just logistically, like her gameplay is the latter half of the game,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's ramping up, the
Yeah.
intensity and the difficulty. So yeah, it makes sense that she has a bit more in terms of like a variety of set pieces and
Yeah.
gameplay elements.
And it's
Um,
it's because like the scars as well are a character that's tied deeply to her. Like you couldn't
yeah,
really do like the sky bridge with Ellie because you were like, oh,
no,
I'm just going across the bridge and I'm not afraid of heights, so this is fine. Or like you couldn't go to Haven because like why would Ellie need to go there? Whereas like with Abby, they do paint reasons as to why she's going into these situations. Like
yeah.
probably the only thing that could have maybe happened to Ellie is she met the Rat King, and that's like the only set
Well,
piece.
she almost did because
Yeah, yeah.
I still think they were there around the same time.
That would, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you
no,
know, she barely missed Abby.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, and I mean it's so cool the way that Abby's section contextualizes the world of Seattle and all the factions and stuff in a way that Ellie's just couldn't have
yeah,
because Ellie's an outsider,
yeah.
right? Coming into this new city, not knowing anything about what's going on
Mhm.
here. Whereas Abby's been living in it for 4 years.
Which is, I love the bit to be fair, where it's like the stadium and like you just see, oh my god, it's like a proper community here. They've got like cows,
Mind blowing.
they got sheep, they got like a nursery full of children. It's like, oh my god, and like just them sort of talking about all the operations they're going to do to obviously get people back to like base and stuff. It's all like we're just intruders in like a community that's obviously just sort of figured their shit out, and they're
Yeah.
just
It's like,
doing
what have we stepped into? Like,
yeah,
this is so much bigger than,
yeah,
and the fact that like Ellie was hunting down these 8 people who were not acting on behalf of the WLF
no,
at all. Like all the WLF are innocent as far as Joel's death goes.
yeah, yeah. It was
And
the same with
Ellie's
like
just
Yeah.
slashing her way through them regardless.
No, it's like, and like it's you get like the bits where it's like the body bags, like when they're going through, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, these keep coming in, and you're like, oh, I'm pretty sure that's my bad. Like,
Tommy, that's might be
yeah,
Tommy.
I'm pretty sure that's our bad for coming to this
Yeah.
city. And then it's like I found it really interesting as well, like the dogs. Like I literally until I think it was the director's commentary, and obviously the documentary touches on it as well. Like you could go through not killing any of the dogs apart from Alice, which like sort of led me to just be running through levels. Like as soon as a dog spotted me, I was like, right, I can't do anything. I'm gonna try
I
and do like a
know.
not kill because the first time you play, you're like, oh, they're in my way. Get rid of them, but then
Yeah.
it's kind of like as Abby, you see the kennels, you see the stuff like that, and you're like, "Oh God, what are we, what am I doing here?"
Yeah.
So I loved that. Like, you don't have to do this. Like, you could just play it a different way. Like, that was just
I
brilliant.
mean, you don't really have to kill the humans either.
No,
Like,
no,
with very few exceptions. Like
yeah,
there's some people you have to kill just to advance the game.
yeah, yeah,
But this is what I got a lot of trouble a while ago because I made a TikTok video being like, all of the like all of the gameplay deaths are not canon. Like
yeah,
people are always like Ellie kills like hundreds of people. I'm like, no, she kills like maybe 10. You know, like
yeah,
because I don't not you don't have to kill all the humans in every interaction to progress.
yeah. No,
So everybody's playthrough is going to be slightly different. So how could it possibly be canon? Me, but people like Jordan or the PSP girl, like
yeah.
yeah, they have to die.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like, yeah, you've got ways to get out of conflict in that game, which, if you want Ellie to be a saint, like, and only kill when she needs to, you can. Like, there's no problem, there's nothing really stopping you. Whereas, like, Abby, like, for her, like, she's in a war with, like, you have to kill, like, the scars chasing after you on horses because that's just what you're in. You're in a war with these people. Like, you need to,
Yeah.
get through. So it makes sense for her. So, yeah, no, I remember at the time, it's like, so you're telling me Ellie kills all these people and then lets Abby go? It's like, well, again, she probably didn't strictly kill like all these people.
Yeah.
You had the choice and you did it as the player. So it is that
Well,
was
and it's like it has to stop somewhere.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It's like why not here?
Like I love the bit where it's because in that sort of final conflict, it's like Ellie's, she's pretty beaten by this point as well, and Abby's been tied to a post for like however long, and it's just like they're both sort of at their weakest point, but like Ellie can't let this go, so like she threatens obviously to kill Lev, and I think it was like in the director's commentary where they're kind of like she is like she is bluffing here, like Abby could have just like called Ellie's bluff, and like Ellie wouldn't have done anything, but like it's just she's going after the thing that Abby cared about. So of course,
Well, and
fighting
it's
ensues.
interesting. It's interesting in that commentary, like some of them were like, "Oh yeah, she's bluffing. She never would have." And I can't remember who it was who was like, "No, she's serious." Who was it who
Mm.
said she would have done it?
Because it would have been Neil Druckmann and
Hallie,
Haley.
I think.
Yeah, it's because of Haley Gross and then Ashley. Because I think Ashley Johnson might have said that she wasn't. I don't know. It's
I can't
hard.
remember which one.
I definitely
One
yeah
of
one
them
of
said
yeah
that she wasn't bluffing. Because it's like, well, what would she have done if Abby was like, "No, I'm not going to fight you. Do it." Like, is Ellie just going to be like, "Okay, like sneak," like
yeah
I don't know.
yeah
But obviously Abby wasn't going to take that chance.
no and yeah, stuff ensues, and yeah, God, that ending segment. I mean, I'm sort of dreading coming up to that and doing that boss fight, and just
Terrific.
yeah. And but again, just you are very much there, being like, oh, come on, I can't keep doing this, guys. Just be, don't even be friends. Just get on your boats and go. Like that could, if they almost gave you the option to do that, but that's just Naughty Dog's thing. Like The Last of Us, there is no in
There's
that
no
final.
player choice.
No, that it has to get the characters will take that choice away from you where it's needed. Like you're very much in that world, and that's just how they think. But it is just fantastic. Like it is good. um
I think that's part of the player frustration too, is I've seen a lot of people say that they wish they'd had a choice. And I'm
mhm.
like, but it's never been a choice-based game.
No,
Ever.
no,
Neither of them. Like you're playing a character. Like the player isn't a character in the way that you are in so many other games. And I think people have become so used to your agency being the be all end all of a game.
yeah,
And these games are just not like that. And I don't, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just different. And yeah, I'm just like, man, all these like RPGs are kind of almost getting in the way of like just pure story experiences where you're just
Yeah.
playing a character who are going to make their own decisions.
Yeah, sometimes there's like not, sometimes you don't get much middle ground with that because sometimes it's like, do you want there to be a choice or not? Because sometimes it's like, like if you play like the Telltale like Walking Dead games, like any of that, like it's almost like you get choices, but they will lead to like a set outcome. It's kind of like you get some variations, but the ending will always be, or this point will
Yeah.
always be the same, like regardless of what you did. Like if you chose between two characters, they'll both die in like either circumstance, like that kind of thing. It's just kind of like, oh, you didn't really give me a choice there, but it's like, what do you want then? Like, do you want to have a choice over everything that happens in the game, or do you want to just sit back and sort of let this happen? Which, yeah, like going into Last of Us 2 and thinking you'd have the choice in that ending, it's like, well, Joel never gave you the choice to not shoot up an entire hospital, so why would you think Ellie's choice would be
You didn't
any
have a
different?
choice to save that doctor.
No, no, no.
Like you didn't have to kill the nurses, but you have to kill the doctor to
Yeah,
progress the game. That
yeah.
wasn't a choice.
No, no. So it is, yeah, just it. The debates I feel like about both games just continue on and on. It's like, was Joel right? Was Ellie right? It's just,
Oh God.
it's
Doesn't matter.
no, it's the brilliant thing about just people talking about these games. And it's, to be fair, why I wanted to sort of do this podcast episode on it, because it's sort of like, the remaster is probably bringing old people back to replay the game, kind of like myself, or new people are experiencing it because my friends, he's never played it before, so he's playing it now. So it's kind of like I'll interpret these like interviews in between like us talking about his experience with the game. So it's just good to get everyone's opinions, because it's all like some people's will change, some people will remain the same. It's just people are still talking about it many years later, just because of how divisive the game was, and just that, the community it spawned. Because I guess like for you, obviously as like a Last of Us content creator, like I imagine you probably still get quite a bit of that like divide just like in your comment section and stuff. Like how do you sort of deal with that kind of thing? Because I know like I posted a couple of videos the other day on my account. Like it's not like I cover it religiously or anything, but it was just like a couple of Last of Us videos, and then it just suddenly turns into Last of Us 2 was good, Last of Us 2 was bad. It's like that
Yeah.
wasn't the point of my video. So you guys you're just picking up the point. I just asked a general question. I was like, oh, I kind of missed the spores from the video games being in the show, and then it just turns into that. You're kind of like, okay, like
Yeah.
it just doesn't go away. So yeah, how do you cope with that?
It's getting harder and harder to be
Mm,
honest. And yeah, it's a little exhausting and I'm pretty religious with like not religious, bad word, but like diligent with
yeah,
monitoring my comment sections, and I have flagged certain words because I part of my I'm really conscious of like making my page and making my comment sections like a positive space and like a safe space because I don't want when people watch my videos, like I don't want them to go into my comment sections and see all that crap.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm kind of protecting my viewers from that. But that then on the other hand, like I still have to see it all
Hmm.
and sort through it and
Yeah.
see the same arguments made over and over again. And sometimes people attack me
Hmm.
and personally, and I'm just
No.
like, okay, like sometimes I can kind of let it roll off my back, but sometimes it's hard,
Yeah.
and you know, the fact that I get that kind of hate still 3.5 years later, and I'm
Hmm.
like such a low tier content creator about this game, I can only imagine like what the
Yeah.
creators like the level. I
Yeah.
I can't even fathom.
No, and
Um,
it is really sad to see. It's like, yeah, as you say, just like even like yourself, who just loves talking about the game, and that's why you set up your platform in the first place. And it's just like what people almost try and like take that away from you, being like,
yeah.
how dare you love this thing? How dare you like make it your your passion to talk about this thing? It's just like, what, just let people be. Like I
Literally, can you leave me alone? Like, leave
yeah,
us alone. Like, if you
yeah,
don't like the game, fine. But like, I've never seen a community hate something and put so much energy into hating something.
yeah, yeah,
It's like if I don't like a game, I don't engage with it.
no, yeah,
I move on.
yeah,
And I think it's in a way, like as frustrating as it is fascinating. And I think,
hmm,
studies could be done about the impact and the social impact of this game
yeah,
and what it says about the gaming community, but also just about like society in general. Because and it's ironic. It's so ironic because so many of the game's messages are reflected in the way people have responded to this game.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is exactly that. It's just such an interesting thing to see unfold. And again, like with people sort of talking about it again and bringing it back up now, the remasters here, it's just either the same arguments are getting rehashed again, or like people are kind of coming up with, other points. And it's kind of like, oh, I haven't seen that before. That's genuinely interesting. Or it's just like, still the people who are like, this is woke propaganda. This is
Oh my
this.
God.
It's like, oh, why are we still having that point of view? It's just like, it's just a video game. Just leave, not in like the sense, just simplifying like, oh, it's just a game. Don't worry about it. Like it does
Yeah, I
tell
know.
a great story. But yeah, it's just like, for God's sake, just like, don't purchase it, don't watch stuff on it. Like it's so easy, just avoid it if you don't, if this isn't going to gel with you whatsoever, just ignore it. But it's just very sad to see it. Say with sort of yourself, with obviously the cast of the game, Neil Druckmann's obviously still getting stuff like to this day as well. It's just,
Yeah.
just it, yeah, I just haven't seen the like for any other like video game before. Like it's just
No.
interesting and like scary and just disturbing. Like this just happens to people who talk about it.
It just reveals the good and the ugly of society, man. Like,
Yeah.
and so does the game. And that's what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
it's such a mirror and they don't even see it.
No.
Like it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's just what the internet will always be, isn't it? Just some people can't accept their faults, their faults. They can't accept that they're wrong, and it's just, well,
And I always have to remember like some of these people are probably so young,
mhm,
Like they're probably teenagers and they just don't, and I don't want to sound condescending. I mean, I'm 30
mhm.
and I'm just like, yeah, like as a teenager, you can't, it's harder to see other perspectives, right?
Yeah,
It's harder
yeah,
to like it's such a I mean, the game is meant for adults. It's rated M for a reason.
yeah,
It's such a mature story. It requires so much empathy and so much self-awareness
yeah.
that just a lot of people don't have.
No, no,
Young or not,
yeah, yeah.
So
And here's like the problem as well. Like depending on the pages you pay attention to, you'll get funneled down a certain route. Like if you watch enough of like videos hating The Last of Us, that's all you'll see. Or if it's like enough
exactly,
people of
yeah.
like loving The Last of Us, like I know especially like since obviously saw we set up this interview, like I've seen more of your stuff, and it's just like that's all my kind of feed is now, is just people like this game's amazing, and then like it's you might get a balanced argument, but yeah, it's just so easy to get funneled down this route and be like, oh well, loads of people think, to you you're like, loads of people think this way, so therefore I'm going to think this way, and just hate on,
Yeah,
especially if you're not going to play the game yourself and make up your mind. Like, it's at the end of the day, you should just play it and then you'll know whether you like it or not,
exactly.
which is
And a lot
just,
of
yeah.
people still haven't.
No,
Like
no.
they've made up their mind, they haven't even played it. I'm like, that's so sad.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've tried watching like the other perspective. Like I think one video that kept getting mentioned in my comments was the Nakey Jakey's video about
Okay.
how Naughty Dog's game design is outdated.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I watched it. I watched the whole thing and I was like, this guy, first of all, didn't quite get the game.
Right. Okay. Yep.
Um, and he kind of tried to hide his own misunderstanding and dislike of the game
Right.
behind his opinion that,
Hmm.
like, well, the game design
Right.
is
Yep.
just
Yep.
outdated
Yeah.
because he himself was impatient
Okay. Yeah.
and just didn't care and didn't engage and didn't pay
Yeah.
attention. And I'm like, fair enough, but also that's your opinion.
Yeah.
And you're positing it as just this blanket fact. And then your audience is like, oh, well, it must be true because Nakey Jakey said so.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no,
No, it's,
no.
yeah,
It's just
because
a different style of game. It doesn't mean it's outdated. It doesn't mean it's
no,
not valid.
it's
It's just
like,
not for you.
yeah, because it's like replaying it. It's like there'll be. So I was gonna put a light on.
Oh yeah.
It's like replaying it. It's like there's plenty. Give me a boost. Oh, help me with this door. I'm like, yeah, this is just Naughty Dog love doing that kind of thing. And it's I've had my things where I'm kind of like, oh, this section's going on a bit long, but then also it's like I know other people are going to enjoy this. Like I love the bit in Seattle Day One where you just get to explore that like open
Hmm.
world area. Like that's fantastic. But then, other people are gonna be like, oh God, why is this bit so big? Or like, there'll be a big like the stealth in the game is fantastic. Like there's so many like good sandboxes where you can just sort of experiment. But I know that this time around, whether it was kind of like I've got to review this soon, so I'm just gonna like leg it through, or like this stealth segment I keep dying over and over again. It's taking too long, but it's kind of like I would enjoy that if it wasn't like I needed to try and finish it for like a review. But I've also when I first played the game, like I didn't have any problems with that. It's more just this circumstance that's brought it. So it is just yeah, just play the game. That's all you got to do, and just make your own opinion. That's just the
Yeah.
one. And because one I can't say the people I've like interviewed have like they've been like hard like negative on the game like by any means. It's kind of like more balanced opinions. Like I don't know. Deadbeat Devil is one who I've no,
Oh.
that's fine. Too. He kind of flagged like I messaged him because like a couple of like people were stitching his like Lazarus sort of like basically his points on the game, and it was that kind of story of like oh you don't understand the game or like trying to think like you just don't get it kind of thing. But I think all his point was about like revenge being bad and that being one of the messages of the story, which I was kind of like I guess in my view it's like it which I can kind of like that is one of the messages in the game. It's like that wasn't like his whole argument though. It wasn't just saying oh revenge is bad, this game's bad. It was just that just saying you can't. I can't quite remember what the whole crux of it was, but it was basically just that point got raised saying, "Oh, revenge is bad." So then everyone kind of went, "Oh, you're simple minded. You can't like think that point." And it's just like when I spoke to him, it's kind of like, "Well, I agree. There is an element to that, but obviously there's just a load of other stuff in the game which you can talk about, and that's what makes it so interesting. It's not just revenge is bad. It's just
It's such an egregious oversimplification.
mm-hmm,
And I think that's why people get frustrated and just say, well, you didn't get it. And I mean, it's
yeah,
interesting because it's like kind of like the game. It's like you get these polarizing opinions, and
mm-hmm,
like neither of them are really right. Like people who
yeah,
just automatically assume someone doesn't understand it just
yeah,
because like that's not right either, you know?
yeah,
So, but I think there is a level of yeah, not quite connect, not quite getting it.
yeah,
And you can obviously I've been involved in the community for so long. I can see it quite
yeah,
quickly.
yeah, yeah,
Um but yeah, just revenge is bad. Like it's so it's not it. It's not all of
mm.
it. You
No,
know?
no.
There's so much more. Um
Yeah, I think it's a like I to be honest with you, I will watch like essays and like if I didn't quite understand a bit of like a game or like try and what the message was, I'll try and like get people's opinions to be like, oh, now I'll try and decide what my view is, just because sometimes it's like it's just not like too much for me, but it's like I just didn't quite get that. So like, can people just give me further context and then I'll because it was like the I know initially with Ellie drowning Abby and it was like the flash up of Joel and I was kind of like, oh, what was that about? And then it's kind of like
mhm.
you watch it through and it's like, oh, obviously that was sort of the better times, or like it's almost it's kind of similarity to obviously Abby's nightmares end when she finds like Levin Yara, and it's kind of like Ellie's PTSD ends just as she's about to like kill Abby, so it's kind of like this isn't necessarily the right thing for her. It's that final flash of like Joel to sort of ground her a bit and be like, oh god,
It's her like remembering that she has the capacity within herself
yeah,
to let things go.
that's it, yeah, yep, yep,
She's already done it, so she can do it again.
yeah,
In that moment. And yeah, you're right. Like those little flashes, and Abby's nightmares are integral to
mm-hmm.
her story. And so many people just, you know, don't think about it.
No,
And like I've seen like let's plays where people get there and they're like, "Why am I here again? This is so," and they don't really think any deeper
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
But it's like it's so significant. And if you don't connect those dots and you don't get it, like yeah, Abby's section is going to feel pointless because
mm-hmm.
you don't understand why she's doing what she's doing.
Yeah,
Her journey is so introspective. She doesn't have a journal where she writes out her feelings. She doesn't talk about her feelings. So all you have is these nightmares that are plaguing her,
yeah, and it's
propelling her.
yeah, because it's almost like a sort of contrast to Ellie, who is by this point still having like some good memories of like Joel as he was, but like obviously for Abby, it is the crux of it is always going to be she remembers her dad being dead in a hospital, and obviously, just that trauma of the event. It's like at least Ellie can kind of still think back on that, but then it's kind of then once the whole Seattle saga ends, that's when Ellie does start to get like PTSD, and that's when, or
Mhm.
that's when it sort of manifests itself more strongly because she didn't get that. It's unfinished business for her, isn't it? Like not killing Abby, and then it's sort of like, oh wait, no, because like Abby kind of overcame her nightmares and like managed to find something to fight for. It's still Ellie's chance to do that and sort of correct it for herself. So it is like it is interesting. And I say I'll never be afraid to sort of get people's opinions, see how they interpret certain stuff, and then it's sort of like finding where you sit on it. So
Mhm.
again, whether that's being sort of what the commentary is on like revenge being bad. I mean, for me, it's kind of like that. Obviously that is a part of the game. Like it's just, sort of, I think for me it's more like how far you would go to get, that revenge by any means. Again, it's that whole with the scars and like WLF, like how are you willing to destroy each other to get what you want for like the sake of how vengeance that's been going on for God knows how many years. It's like how much do you let it like fester up
Yeah.
inside of you? And it's, it's not just like, oh, revenge is bad, you don't get what you want. It's more like it's just the toll it can take
It's
on
the
you.
consequences
Yeah.
of revenge
Yeah.
because like saying revenge is bad, like it passes judgment on it,
Yeah.
right? But I don't think the game does that.
No.
I
No.
I think the game, yeah, it explores like the impact that it has.
Yeah.
Um for better and for worse.
Yeah.
Um and not in a way that, as I said, like passes judgment on the characters for pursuing it.
Yeah.
It
Because
it explores why they do it.
yeah, and it's like where like you can view it as like vengeance or like justice. Like it's sort of like the two
Yeah.
at points they're not like exclusive. Like it's just
Yeah,
someone else's justice is just some like to someone else just looks like revenge. Like, as the player, you're
exactly.
like, I'm gonna get justice for Joel, I'm gonna kill Abby. And it's like, well, Abby was just doing the same thing by that standard for her dad. Like, you can't say it was either way. So no, it is like, just the different viewpoints you can have on it. And like it does, that's the whole point of the game is just for you to be in someone else's perspective and try and see things from another angle. Because it's again just the small stuff with like the WLF, like obviously having names and like calling out to people when they die, or like,
Hmm.
dogs being in kennels when like you're in Abbey and you're like, oh my God, I must have killed, all these dogs were just here living happy lives. And like, what have I done to this community just in the pursuit of trying to get to one person who did this thing? It's just the years, as you say, the consequences of that action, like how much damage you've done to the, to try and make things right, or in your mind, fix and solve everything.
Yeah, it's like how many other Ellies did Ellie create?
Yeah, which that's why I found the point interesting about if someone else just randomly showed up to the farmhouse to be like, you killed my friend, or you killed my
Yeah.
like relative. And it's just like, oh my God, like that could just happen. Like you could get endless Last of Us sequels, and it just covers
Yeah.
everyone else's perspective. It's just that, I think even just Abby's standpoint of just being the relative and NPC that you just killed nonchalantly in a previous game, coming back, it's just not really something you've like I think I'd ever seen before. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, no.
No.
And it does just reframe what your actions can mean for like all these other people like you're just fighting against. You just think it's an objective in a game, but it's not. It's more, it could be
Yeah.
more than that. Like if it was real life, you are just you could be destroying someone else's life entirely and just shaping them into it's sort of shaping Abby into a weapon, into like a monster who's willing to, torture a guy who killed her dad, and still not get the satisfaction she wants from that. Like it still just cripples her, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like at the point where we dehumanize our enemies,
Mm-hmm.
we're lost.
Yeah.
That's that's it in a very tiny nutshell.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant sort of focus on like violence and stuff, just the whole game. And like again, just the documentary, hearing them just talk about that and just all the different elements is just, it's just such a well crafted experience. And just the fact that we can have like this discussion on it, and like other games you just don't hear people talk like you just don't hear
No.
people picking it apart as much, or like still talking about it years later, like to this degree, where I've called like 3 people to do an interview about this game just because there's just so many opinions and just people I want to speak to on this. Like again, just crazy to sort of be talking to yourself about this game. And just, we've been I don't know how long we've been talking for, but just
Almost 2 hours.
oh god.
I know, but there's so much to talk
I
about.
know,
Like,
I know. And especially just this game in general, just how divisive it is and just the different opinions you get from the internet and just people about this game. Like, it's just so interesting to talk about.
yeah. And it's interesting, like, as much as I was saying, oh, it's exhausting to just see the same things over and over again. You're so right. It's part of it.
Yeah.
It's the reason why these games are so like special and poignant is because they generate so much discourse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I mean, as I said, it's exhausting, but it's integral.
Yeah, and it's just interest, and it can just help your like experience just talking about the game and just like seeing it from a different perspective and just understanding it that little bit more just from all the conversations you have and like getting people's different views on it. It's just so interesting. Like, again, it's been very interesting talking to you about just your thoughts on the game.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been great. I mean, as I said, I can talk for hours and we did. So
No, exactly.